Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bloody Legends with Jai That Aussie Metal Guy and Jim Taylor. Make sure you're a bloody legend and hit that like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the great content from these bloody legends. Let's get into it. Hey, how you all going? Thank you very much for joining us for another edition of the Bloody Legends with myself and Jim. We have extra special guest, Jim Ward. He's calling in on phone, so we don't get to see his face today. That's right. He's over in Montreal. He's a fairly busy man at the moment. So Jim Ward, thank you very much for joining myself and Jim for a chat.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No, absolute pleasure, man. I see that you are just about to hit Australia in May 2024. Recent announcement to celebrate the Wiretap Scars, which is like 21 years old now. 21, 20-ish by the time you get here at 22. But it's also celebrating what is Sparta, like your 20-plus years career of Sparta as well, man. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're pumped. We can't wait to get there. One of my favorite places in the world. So can't wait.
That's cool. That's very cool.
So looking back on your 20 plus years of Sparta, you kind of, Sparta evolved out of At the Drive-In, which you kind of started way back when I think you were like a teenager for At the Drive-In, and it was a hugely influential time of your career as well. You got At the Drive-In was absolutely massive over here in Australia. I was talking to Jim before we this morning about it as well. Like At the Drive-In was absolutely massive that time for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it was, unfortunately we didn't get there until the end of our run, as a band. So it was kind of like one of the last things we ever did in that original sort of time period. We came for Big Day Out and we had sort of this legendary time, and it was the first time we had been, and we got to spend, like those tours were crazy. The Big Day Out back then was crazy, and to be like 22 and see sort of all this shit for the first time, and this foreign country so far away from home, like the furthest we'd ever been away from home, and just the coolest people, the coolest bands, like the coolest experience. Everything was just over the top, and it kind of set the stage for my relationship, I think, with Australia. So not only did I go, I think Sparta's been there 4 or 5 times. I've been there on other tours by myself a couple of times. All this stuff was, it's just, it sort of, like I said, it set the stage for this relationship that I have. And I keep saying this, but Australians and West Texans have a very keen connection. There's something in our water, right, that makes us bros, right? From just day one, we just get along. We understand each other, right? So I think it's been cool, and it's such a trip, man. That place is such a trip. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. It did kind of set the groundwork. I was there at that Big Day Out as well over in Adelaide. It was an absolute ripper performance by you guys as well. And you did hit the nail on the head. It kind of set what was a really close relationship for yourself and Australia as well. It's always been hugely popular. So kind of when At the Drive-In it kind of had its moment and you kind of moved on to Sparta, you kind of also found your voice as well. You kind of moved from the four, doing the backing vocals to being the front man and having that vocals, and you were able to bring your voice out, and it was so well received. I remember that Wiretap Scars. It was absolutely hammered over here in Australia. And I was saying to Jim as well, I said, man, Sparta were really big. He said, yeah, they're all right in the US, but they didn't quite get it as big as they did in Australia. I just kind of think At the Drive-In to your project with Sparta and the other guys when they'd done Mars Volta, it was just, I don't know, something about that music and your style. It kind of just really resonated over here with the Australian audiences.
Yeah, I think maybe just right time, right place, the way it is. And I'll always say, like, going back, again, we came to Big Day Out with Sparta the first time and playing to that big a crowd, because we were a bigger band by that point, honestly. And it was just playing to so many people. And that support, that's one thing I always think about Australia is sort of the encouragement of the crowd. Like, it's not everybody's there to have a good time, but they're also lifting you up so much. And to be like young in my career as a frontman, that's like a huge thing. And I always tell this story too. When I went over and did a solo acoustic tour with one of the other touring festivals, and it was the first time I had really ever done that, played by myself with an acoustic guitar. And the sideshow I opened for Incubus at I don't know, like a 4,000 seater. and I was so nervous. And somebody in the front row was just like, "You fucking got this," and it was like, it's just what I needed to hear to just, you know what I mean. And I was so scared because there was so many people, and you forget that feeling of nervousness after you've been doing this so long. But once you take yourself out of that normal situation where your crew and your band and it's electric, and all of a sudden it's just you and a guitar and it's scary as hell, you know, just having someone just first fucking thing out of their mouth, you know, "You got it, let's do this." Like, it was the best, man. It was the best. And that's kind of you know, it's just my relationship with Australia, and I've a bunch of friends there, obviously, from all the years. And you know, I don't get to see them very often because it's, you know, bit of a ride, but it's gonna be great.
That's awesome. Jim, I saw you I guess about 23 years ago. And I worked for I went to school in Southern Virginia, and the radio station I worked for was 92.1 Tiger FM, and a bunch of us that were all jocks on the station, we got passes to this show in Richmond, Virginia, and I saw you guys and Our Lady Peace.
Oh wow!
And I want to say,
I remember this show.
It was like maybe 2001 or 2002.
Yeah, 2002. Was Jimmy Eat World there too?
Yes, that was it.
Yeah, yep. I remember
that was
that
it.
show.
Yeah, yep. Jimmy Eat World and American Hi-Fi, I believe.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yes,
show.
sir. You guys were killer, man. So this is definitely now that we're all in our 40s, our inner you know, 90s thousands or kid, me and Jai we're screaming internally. This is very cool.
Yeah, no, it's been super fun, man, to play this. You know, we started this tour in the US in May, and we knew it was going to be about a year around the world, and we knew we wanted to end in Australia, and it took a lot to sort, you know, like, we're sort of rebuilding the band at the same time. This is a good way of sort of reintroducing ourselves to people, and learning about new fans, and like kind of just always have fun. That's the only thing that number one thing for us that we think about is this fun? Is this fun for everybody? Then cool, let's do it. If it's not fun, let's get out, because this is not worth it if you're not having fun. And to be able to sort of go back and play these songs and meet fans, kids, you know, that are at the shows now. There's like 13, 14-year-old kids at the shows that they're like, "Yo, I grew up on you. My dad, my mom play you all the time." And you know, get to hang. And I always try to make time for the kids at the shows, because I always think, like, when I was 13, that shit changed my life. So I want to go, if I can, I want to go and talk to them and hang out with them and give them a pick, and just say thanks for coming, and stick at it. And, you know, this is like the best life in the world. So glad you can be here with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you've had an amazing career. You're celebrating not only the 20 plus years of Wiretap Scars and Sparta, but coming out of At the Drive-In, and when you're finding your voice, in which you do have an amazing voice. People like myself, this give me a chance to kind of not only dive back into your album, but also dive back into a lot of stuff that I may have missed over your career. You know what I mean? And I missed that Sparta album last year. I don't know how, but that one was
we didn't do shit. That's why.
Yeah, man. But you know what I mean? It probably comes back to what you're saying, doing things you enjoy and not pushing yourself, and just kind of enjoying the music it is. But that album, bloody hell, dude, that's an absolutely amazingly beautiful album, as is Trust the River. Those
thank you, man.
Then tell me a little bit about working on that album, because I started marking songs that I really enjoy, and I just give up because I just put down just about the whole bloody album. You've got an amazing sound. You can hear this freedom in your voice and in your sound with these albums. Tell us about them.
So that's it, man. It's all about freedom for me. You know, I've said this many times. I've been more successful than I ever wanted to be. I don't enjoy really that part of music. I don't enjoy the pressure that gets put on you. I don't enjoy what it does to my mental health. You know, I didn't really want to go back to Wiretap Scars because it was not a great part of my life. As much fun as it looked like I was having, I was kind of destroying myself at the same time with, you know, shit that you do when you're in a rock band and you're miserable and depressed and you don't know you are. And that's not what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be freedom and celebration and enjoyment. And it took a long time for me to come around to that again with this record. But in the meantime, right, so we made a couple of records really quick. In my life, I was on tour for about 8 years making records and touring and all the time and gone. And there was a point in in 2004 when we were on the Porcelain tour, 2004, 2005 probably. It's the only time I've ever canceled shows in my life. And I woke up in a hotel in Pennsylvania, and I swear I didn't want to be alive. And I hated that feeling so much. And it scared me so much that I literally went to the airport and flew home and sort of destroyed the band for a while. After that time period, and after going home and sort of starting to begin to understand what was happening with me internally and sort of all the shit that I'd been through, and start unpacking it and realizing like a lot of this stuff is pretty traumatic when you're a young person, and it's a lot of things to live up to, and there's a lot of people in your ear, and I'm not trying to like ruin people's idea of what music is, right? Like it's the best life in the world, but you still have to take care of yourself. And after that, we made Threes, and that's the beginning. To me, that's the beginning of my journey. Is like Wiretap and Porcelain are sort of like what I did up to that age, and I think I did the fuck out of it, right? And starting with Threes is when I started going to the studio and actually sort of demanding that I be heard. And it's hard to do in a band because bands are really very delicate dynamic, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of weird shit going on between you. And it's hard when you're like the primary songwriter, but you want to make sure that other people in the band feel important and their ideas are listened to and heard. And then at one point you start realizing like I may be watering down my shit because I want to make everybody else feel good. And that's a hard sort of thing to balance. And that became my journey that I feel like I'm now at the end of. Like that whole time period from Threes and then taking a break. And then I did some driving stuff again, and then did a little bit of Sparta stuff and Sleeper Car. And then in 2016, this is what I'm getting to, is that you use the word freedom. In 2016, the driving stuff came back around, and I was at rehearsals, and I eventually, like 3 weeks before the tour, got kicked out of a band that I started. And it was fucking brutal, and it was hard, and it was emotionally shitty, and I lost a bunch of friends again. And the one thing that I learned from it is that now I have total freedom, and I'll never be in that position again. I'll never be at the whim of somebody else. I'll never be trying to make sure other people get paid so that they can have the life that they want. Like I only worry about music. That's all I fucking worry about. I don't worry about anybody else's dreams or if they want to be rock stars or whatever. And I'm not saying any of this about the other guys. I'm saying in the bands that you could be in life, these are the things that are important to me. And until I had that freedom and I got to make Trust the River the way I wanted to do it, I made Trust the River in 3 days. We recorded that album in 3 days, including we wrote Miracle on the spot. What you hear on that record is a second take of that song. And it was maybe like one of the most powerful experiences of my life musically. And
that's super.
That only came from freedom. And that's why I'm going on this long tangent, is because you use that word. It sounds like freedom. It's because it fucking is. That's what it is. It's freedom to me.
And then having that freedom, you also be able to create some of your best material as well. Because Wiretap Scars is a great album, and I love it. But listening to Trust the River and Sparta, as I was saying, there's just something about those albums in your voice, and as you hit the nail on the head, the freedom as well, because at the beginning of Sparta you would have had all this pressure coming out about the drive-in, and it was a great time, and you were getting all this airplay all over the world and that, but you also would have had it was a different time then. You had all this pressure from the record companies as well, and that would have fucking really been a big downer on something that should have been a positive time. I
think that if somebody like in this industry, when people think that you're about to be the next big thing or the hottest shit on earth or whatever, the next Nirvana or whatever the fuck they want to put on the magazine covers, like now we never peaked, right? So it's all these question marks. How big would you have been if you stayed together? How many records would you have sold? Now you have a new band, and both of our bands felt that pressure, I'm sure. But for me, I was like, now I got to not just carry the weight of being a frontman in a band. Now I have to carry the weight of what if for a band that stopped after 7 years. Like we did the shit out of that band forever. It's just not everybody knew about it for a long time. So now you have to carry this pressure of fans being like, oh, I never got to see that band, but I'm seeing you, but I don't really want to see you. I want to see that band. It's just like, it's a lot when you're a kid. And then when the industry just puts fucking drugs and alcohol in your dressing room to make sure that you keep following the plan, now start looking at like why these people, people want to know why people die in this industry at a young age. Well, it's not very hard to figure out, like for us to stay on the road, we get placated by abusing our bodies, you know what I mean? So somebody else can cash in a lot of times. And then at the end of it, we're like fucking old racehorses, right? Like we just get put out to pasture because there's the next thing making the money for them, etc. And again, like I think if you can live through that, then this shit is the best, man. Like I don't have any expectations. I don't have any, like I said, I don't even know how many records I've sold in my life. I have zero care. I don't give a shit. And, you know, as long as I can make the money in my life to pay the bills to support my family, I'm cool. That's all I need. I don't need
That's it, man.
I don't need a gold plaque. I don't need a fucking anything, man. I just want to make music and have fun and enjoy life. And if you can live long enough in this industry to get to this point in your career, which a lot of us have, and a lot of the guys our age are hanging out and talking about this stuff, it's amazing, man. It's amazing because you have this freedom of knowledge now, right? Like we understand how this shit works. We understand how to survive it, and we understand how to find fun. And all of a sudden you make the best music of your life because you're tapped into all these new levels.
That's beautiful. That's really inspiring, Jim. That's cool to hear all this, and you know, especially in the creative process when you're like you were saying, like, you know, where's your line drawn where it's like, I want to make my own music, but it's like also, you know, you don't want to cut anybody else out. You know, it's good if you have a bunch of guys that are like, hey, man, you come up with it, we'll build around it. You know, and that's the best feeling. You know, and
you want to be
oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say you want to be part of the gang. You know what I mean? Like I love being a sideman. And at the drive-in, I was a sideman. I love it. I love that job. I love making up riffs and singing when you need me to, and like letting you have all the fucking attention. I'm cool with all that, man. I love that job.
1000%.
But it's like
1000%.
but like you gotta know your place. You know what I mean? Because that's how it works.
Right.
And when any of that gets upset, any of that balance gets upset, it's like that plane crashes fast, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Going back, so excluding, you know, the negative aspects of what you had to go through with those records, what's it like playing those songs from when, you know, we were all in our 20s when we heard this, or early 20s or whatever. I mean, we were kids. What's it like playing those now, 20 years later? Do you I'm sure you find new and inventive ways, because I mean, you play an amazing array of guitars from I think you have you've done what? You've had Epiphone, you've had Gibson, you've had Fender, and what's it like to play those songs from 20 years ago? Different every time.
The coolest thing is that, and I didn't really realize this till we started, because you know, like at rehearsals, you're like, I remember Jerry Finn when we made this record saying, "You're gonna regret singing this high, I promise you." And I'm like, "No, I won't. No, I won't. Like this is what I do, right?"
Right.
And then fast forward to 46, and I'm like, "Oh shit, this is high," right? So
this is gonna hurt.
Part of it is like, physically getting back to the ability to do that has been fun and kind of like
good.
It's been a good process. We're a 3-piece now, and I will never go back to anything else. Like I love it so much. I carry all the guitar parts. I carry most of the vocals, and I love it because you can actually hear things, and we can change dynamics quickly and effectively, and it's beautiful. Like it works really, really well. But the other thing that I kind of had forgotten is that in the last 20 years, I got pretty fucking good at what I do. You know what I mean? So you go back and you play these songs, and you're like, "Oh shit! Like I can own this now." Like it's a good feeling.
Right.
And as far as like the mental stuff goes and the emotional stuff, early on I said, if we're going to do this, we're going to treat it as a celebration, not a recreation. That's a very key description, right? I don't ever want to be that guy again. And I lived through it, and I loved it, and it's changed my life, but I don't want to go back to that. Like I don't want to dye my hair. It's gray, and I fucking earned every single one of these, right? And so coming back and saying, we're going to do this as a 3-piece, I'm going to sing it this way. It's like, you know, it's pretty accurate to the record, but it still has like some life to it. It doesn't feel like bogged down in trying to nail everything the way it was or whatever. And the energy is there. And that's the important part. But the biggest thing to me is I said, I want to treat this as like a celebration of existing and surviving through this. Like, this is like a victory lap for me. You know what I mean? Like I lived to this point, and that's so fucking important to say, because telling myself 20 years ago, like, hang in there, you're going to get through it. That's what I needed to hear. Right. So that's what I want people to hear that are maybe you know, and I spent a lot of time with younger bands and talking to them about the negatives of this industry and just letting them know that there's a way around that, and you're allowed to use the word no. People think that you're not, right? You're supposed to say yes to everything, every opportunity, every radio show, every fucking blah, blah, blah. Because if you don't, you're going to ruin your career. That's what they always say. And I'm like, yo, that's not true. That is not true. You just got to like roll with it and enjoy yourself. And like, when you want to do something, you'll be 100% at your best because you said no to something you didn't want to do. You know what I mean? And that's what fans deserve. Fans deserve to see you at your best. They don't deserve to see you phoning it in because you have to do some favor for whatever label. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Always keeping it fresh, keep it inventive, and be passionate about it. That's absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
we're lucky to do this then.
Oh, and kind of as you were saying, like some things are worth more than money. You've built a legacy, and being able to like come back, you know what I said, as you're saying, this is a celebration coming back to these songs and kind of creating it. Also, it's a celebration of the fans, like people like myself that, you know, dive back into this album, and you get so much different meaning listening to something so many years later, as well as you playing it, but also the fans that are experiencing it on the other side, you know, to experience these tracks again and have these different emotions and kind of revisit it, but have this celebration of this time too.
I will tell you that there's nights on this tour where I look out and on certain songs, and I kind of know which songs they are now because they're the songs that people have kind of latched onto for their own emotional journeys, right? When I look out and I see people crying, it's like the ultimate feeling of accomplishment that we're part of their life to a point where they're emotional about it, you know? It's incredible. And I'm so grateful to get to do this. And I'm so glad we ended up doing it because I was on the fence, you know? And there's a part of you that's like, yeah, I don't want to ever go backwards. So we had to find a way to not go backwards, but to still celebrate. And I think we did it. And it's been a blast. And believe me, we are going to have a fucking good time in Australia. I'll tell you that.
Definitely. So you're over in Montreal at the moment. Are you touring over there?
Yeah. We're doing a Canadian tour right now, which, you know, for me is cold. It's very, very cold.
Yeah.
And it's we're playing a place that I haven't been to in probably 20 years tonight. And it's been killer. We're on tour with some friends of ours from Canada, and shows have been huge and great and fun and everything you want it to be, except cold.
Except cold.
It's fucking cold for me, yeah.
Except cold. So we kind of did touch a little bit on it, the freedom working as a musician now. You can't have that freedom, but I have been asking you a lot lately, kind of what motivates and inspires you now, Jim, as a musician? Because I dare say it'd be a lot different than young 20-year-old you, yeah?
Sure, yeah. I think that there's, you start seeing the world differently. And I think that that's, you know, so most of my stuff starts with sort of one line that's taken from nonfiction, kind of something that's happening in my life or around me, and then I sort of build something around it. And I'm not really you know, I'm a very emotional writer, and I'm a very sort of imagination over like description or whatever. So I think it's just your perspective on the world. You know, I have a different way of looking at things. And I've had a lot of experiences to draw on, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're things that I need to work through. And that's kind of the best part of writing music for me, is that it's therapy, and it's just kind of a way to deal with whatever's on my mind. So it's honestly just the scenery around me changes, and that's what I work on.
Here's one for Jim.
Awesome.
You also play keys as well, which Jim there, he's a guitarist and keys as well. Tell us a little bit about kind of your average writing session, Jim. Do you sit down there with the keys or guitar or just whatever kind of feels right when you're creating music?
Yeah, it just depends on what you're feeling at the time. You know, like I tend to write late at night on guitar. I usually write on an electric, not plugged in, sort of in a corner of a room. And I've been doing that since I was a kid. And that kind of explains why I play a lot of open notes in the chords. And also, I don't play bar chords very often. So it's just kind of became my style and the way I write. And then I love getting into like, when I was writing the songs for what became the self-titled record, a lot of that stuff started with little riffs on just kind of messing with keyboards on Logic, because I wrote it during the pandemic and I was just sitting in my house trying not to go crazy. And I would just like throw on headphones while my wife is watching TV and just start making weird sounds. And then, you know, before I knew it, I was like sending tracks to people to play on, and it kind of snowballed pretty quick. But it just kind of depends on what, you know, what I'm in the mood for. And I always write lyrics last. So I usually come at it as a guitar player first, and then kind of do other stuff after.
That's cool. That's very cool. That's an interesting process with that, because sometimes there's some dudes that do the lyrics first and then try to build the song around that. That's cool that you're a little more your style actually coming to that. Yeah, you have an interesting use of space. The way you space out your notes and chords like that. You remind me of guys like Tom Verlaine. I'm trying to think of, it just escaped me. I was trying to think of other ones. But who influenced you as a guitar player? You're self-taught as well, right?
Yeah, I'm self-taught. You know, for
Yeah.
me, very early, like the DC kind of what they call Revolution Summer stuff that came out of that,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the Fugazi and sort of Rites of Spring, and all those bands were always like the bands that I leaned on in, like, sort of within the punk rock genre. But I'm also like a huge like Tom Petty fan. I'm a huge Billy Joel fan. So Billy Joel was probably like
Nice.
my first real love. I was actually like before I discovered punk rock, and this made me very, very popular in 6th and 7th grade. I was very into big band. So I listened to like almost
Oh, sure.
exclusively like Benny Goodman, you know,
Oh,
which
that's cool.
again doesn't make you cool, but I think a lot of my melody and song structure and is sort of a weird combination of growing up with those kind of things. Like I didn't have a very traditional, like I didn't really play like in a 4/4 punk band ever. You know, I was kind of always in these weird, like somewhere between like Fugazi and like Lemonheads, or like Radiohead and U2, like
Yeah.
sort of in these spaces between bands that are kind of poppier and then bands that are kind of weirder. And I've always loved that space,
Yeah.
being able to sort of dip into both, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, where it's like you find something hooky, but then it's also you're gonna like, you're gonna find like instead of like riff based stuff, you're almost using like textures.
Yeah.
So that's what I hear from you anyway. I mean, when you got, like, again, this was 21 years ago. Yeah, when you guys did that show, I was like, man, you just had a really, really big sound.
Yeah, and I think it still carries. Like I feel like the best compliment from these shows is when people go, how do you do that as a 3-piece? You know, that's like my favorite compliment. And you do occasionally get someone that's like, you need another guitar player, and I'm like, well, start your own band. Like we've already done it.
Right.
I've already done that. You get to do whatever you want. That's the rule. You know what I mean? Like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, fuck you, buddy.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
Yeah, as
you're
mentioning those influences, you can really, really hear them in the last couple of albums. You know what I mean? You have these real punky moments, and kind of, as you said, like it's kind of like somewhere in between. You know what I mean? And those tracks like It Goes, Dark Red Quicksand, Spiders, and then you have these real moments of Americana. And you were mentioning Billy Joel, and I hate to draw comparisons, bands like Modest Mouse, and it just has this great sound and this real journey on it. And as I did mention before, you can hear kind of the 20 plus years in the musical career you've had in these kind of albums, these later albums.
Yeah, and the cool thing about doing this tour, so right now we're like main support for something, so we just play the record start to finish, and I actually don't say anything between songs. We just play it essentially like you're listening to the album, because I realized early on that when I started talking between songs, it would kind of take people out of that zone.
Yep.
And so I decided the best thing to do is just like let it be. Like we just play the whole fucking record start to finish with nothing interrupted. And then, but when we do headlining shows, obviously, like we will in Australia, like we do that, and then we talk for a minute, and then we get to play sort of, you know, the hits of all the other records. So we get to go through this journey together, and then we get to show what we're doing now and sort of like touch on some other records. And you know what? I realize that the price of tickets these days is pretty high, and I appreciate that people are buying them, and we're going to make it worth your while. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just so people also understand, like, we've had a few people on Instagram that like, these are fucked up prices. And I'm like, it's 14 fucking hour plane ride away. Like, it's not, we're not greedy people, believe me. But also if we're there, we're going to make it worth your while, you know?
That's
Right.
I'm gonna go on a little fucking rant. They're supporting a band is not buying tickets to these shows. These guys come over here, as you said, the plane for, but also it's about support. I think society, like, it's great. Probably the labels don't have so much of a hold, but now it's these digital streaming platforms. You've probably seen it the last 20 fucking plus years, the changes in the way music is consumed. You know what I mean? People now think, oh yeah, I can just go over, press play, I'll listen to it for free. But for our generation, it was always buying records, buying albums, going to shows. Now as an artist, it's kind of, it's good. Everyone gets to consume your music. Everyone gets these moments, and it's great. Your music's being heard. It's better than not being heard at all. But also there's got to be some sort of a middle ground where an artist can get paid for the work they're producing. And fans are forgetting how much work goes into this. You know what I mean? It's not you just wake up and go, oh yeah, bust out an album. You've also got families, you've got jobs, you've got other things you've got to work around. And if you put your whole life on hold for a fucking 2-3 weeks to make an album, how are you going to eat fucking food, dude? Like, you know what I mean? If you go to work as a plumber, you should get paid, dude. And going to these shows and putting on these shows is one way for an artist to actually get paid, connect with their fans, and kind of actually make some money to maybe put some food in the cupboard and support their family.
Yeah. And people always, I mean, my wife jokes that I'm a t-shirt salesman because that's essentially what we live on, is selling t-shirts now. Like, it's not selling records. We make records so that we can go on tour, so we can sell t-shirts. And when people say like, how can I support your band? How can I support any band? I'm like, go to their show, buy a t-shirt. Yep. That's like the number one thing you can do, is buy a t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have so many t-shirts. It is fucking crazy. I was going through my black shirts. I think I wore this one last year once. Like,
but it's like I was my actually he's my shout out to my boss man, Mr. Morgan Rose from Seven Dust. He did this interview. He was with Head from Korn. And they were talking about their favorite records as a kid. And he's like, you know, nowadays, you know, everybody, you know, not knocking the digital age, but it's you see they're watching concerts through their phone. You didn't have that back in the day. And Morgan was like, "What happened when you went to school on Monday? You had the T-shirt, you had the vinyl, you had everything. You were invested to the band, and I want to see more of that. Be invested in the band. Yo, we got we're wearing a Sparta shirt. We're in Megadeth. We're wearing this. We were there at that show. Like, this blows my mind talking to you 21 years later. I was literally, it's all of us with our Radio 92.1 Tiger FM T-shirt, and we're sitting there like, holy shit! They're named after. Yeah, I study history too, so you had a name Sparta, so it was like, are they going to dress up like that? Or, you know, I didn't know at the time, you know, but it was, I was there, and to say to you, you know, now in our 40s, dude, I saw you 20 years ago, and it was like at the Richmond Amphitheater or something. That's really,
I remember.
You're invested at that show, and that's a big thing. It's
walk to the show, stand in line, buy a T-shirt, like meet the band afterwards. Like, all that stuff is important, right? You know? Yeah.
How's the show, 100%. Bro? You had to be there. You had to be there.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, it's like
that's a perfect point. And you have to be there when Sparta hits Australia next year. Everybody go see him. They're all over the bloody place. Jim Ward, this has been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with us. Do you have any last words, shout outs, thank yous, or anything else you'd like to add in there, my friend?
Just so grateful for the support that Australia and fine Australians have given us, and really honestly can't wait to get back and have some fun.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Jim. You have a lovely evening. Thank you, mate.
Cool.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bloody Legends with Jai That Aussie Metal Guy and Jim Taylor. Make sure you're a bloody legend and hit that like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the great content from these bloody legends.